Lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Morning Show, the top morning show in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines and, most importantly, provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information, because we are all about keeping people in business and helping everybody navigate through any markets that we're going to be faced with here over the next, foreseeable future. You guys, the reality is market shifts and everything else, and we can't stop showing up for our customers and everything else, though. And that's what we're here. It's why I proudly fly this American flag behind me every single day, is because I'm living my American dream. And I want to help each and every one of you guys live that as well. And yeah, you guys, I got a very special guest for you today. And I will bring her on here in a second. But before we do that, and before we break down any of these issues that we got going on today, got to give a shout out to my friends over at VHub. You guys, vhubapp.com. You need to hit them up. Whether you're a broker, carrier, or shipper alike, we all need access to trailers at some point in time. And the best part about with what they're doing over at VHub, you guys get paid to do this. So if you're a small fleet or a one truck carrier, you don't have to shut your operation down if your trailer goes in the shop. You can hop on VHub, you guys, and choose a trailer and get paid to do that. And this is on top of the revenue that you can get by loading out that trailer, you guys. So what they're working on right now is Paragould, Arkansas to Orting, Washington, which is just outside of Tacoma, and you get paid $15.50 to do that. And again, that's on top of the revenue that you can get by putting freight in the back of that trailer. And that's just a good way for you guys to help offset some of those rising fuel costs and everything. And then also San Diego, California, going out to Selma, Texas, $750 to do that. San Diego going out to Laredo, Texas, $600 to do that one. And then they also have Dallas, Texas, going to Mississauga, Ontario. And they also have a couple other locations up there in Canada. You just got to go on their website and put in your offer on that stuff, you guys, because there's a bunch of trailers for that. So hit them up, you guys, vhubapp.com. Just do me a favor. Let them know that the Freight Coach sent you. They're the reason why this neon light's on behind me every single day. Drew Driscoll, he is back. Rocky Top. Let's go. Tennessee with a big win this weekend. Dominic, good morning, sir. Rick Wooten, good morning. Nicholas, good morning. Papa Bear in a chair over on YouTube, good morning to you. Erica Hamilton, good morning. All right, I'm going to bring my guest on right now. She's ready to rock. Don't be confused. She's not in a disco, but she could be. So I got Ann Renke with the TIA. You guys know Ann. She's a CEO over there. What's going on?
Yes, I have a flickering light effect. It's just for you, Chris.
That's
going on. I'm not having that much fun. I can guarantee you.
Oh, that is awesome. It's just par for the course, But Ann, that's the thing is people don't pay attention to as much as we like to think. And that's something that I learned early on, like creating content and doing a bunch of this stuff, is I thought like, oh, everything has to be perfect. Otherwise, you just got to show up. It's all about the quality of the information that you're putting out there that people pay attention to. It's not like making sure the camera angle's right, because frankly, there's no camera angle that makes this orange polo look that great. So.
Well, we appreciate you, Chris, and thank you for having me on.
No, absolutely. So we got the Technovations is coming up out here, finally out in my backyard in Phoenix. I'm sure you love it when there's conferences that are close to home, because you don't have to get out on the road that much. And it's nice to be able to sleep in your own bed. And I mean, especially because you're gone like what, 50 weeks out of the year, it seems. It's like you're always out there with people. And that's what I love about you, Ann, is because you're not like behind the desk. Like you're out there meeting members of the TIA. You're going to their offices and everything.
Well, part of it was I started in the middle of COVID. So for almost a year, I really couldn't meet anybody. And so I have to make up for lost time. And the only way I can get smarter about our members and what they need is by actually talking to them and where they are. And so I have appreciated the experience and the opportunity. Is the pandemic over? Yes, no. But I'm glad to it be some sort of normalcy that I can actually meet these people.
Yeah. No, and that's just what's key, I think. Like, and I'm seeing that with, even just like going out there to conferences now and just meeting people in person and actually building that human interaction. I always think it's going to be a part of our life, no matter how digital some aspects are going to get. People crave human interaction and just knowing like, oh my gosh, this is a real person.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. And, we had our first annual in 2 years back in April. We had 1,500 people, and the energy was, you could really feel it. And so we're anticipating the same impact with Technovations. It's a smaller to IT, to what's happening in technology, AV, EV, all of it. And you just can learn a little bit more and pick up these casual that triggers a thought, that triggers an idea. Hey, I didn't know this existed. That's my notebook filled just from the past 3 conferences I've attended where somebody thought like, oh, that's something that we should look at. We should really figure that out. You just don't have that over to having that now, that live, the sense of togetherness that we all had. And Chris, this, for the first time ever, we're having Shark Tank. So we're having 4 innovators who are going to talk about their technology, their sort of whatever you want to call it, and have judges. Now, I don't think they're going to get $1 million. We don't have the budget for that. They're not even going to get $500,000. They're probably not even going to get any money at all. But amongst their peers, isn't that valuable? Like, that's more valuable than anything else.
No, for sure. And it is. And I think, to kind of unpack of a lot of what you're talking about there, the thing that I love the most about the TIA and being involved in that organization, for those of you who don't know, like, I do a lot of training with them in their new broker success program. And it is that togetherness, because like there's organizations that are even in that are very well established. And then there's the startup, the one person operation who just got their start in the industry. And you see that at the conferences as well. So like back in San Diego earlier this year, you have some of the largest names in the industry who are having lunch and talking strategy with smaller brokers. It's such a collective feeling that's out there. That's what I love the most about it, is it's like, there's no, like, yes, they're all technically competitors, but they're not when they're inside and they're gathering together and talking about strategy and best practices. And I truly feel this way, that my big thing with the TIA is it's like, it's that whole high tides raise all ships. And, collectively, if we all put best practices out there together, we're only going to elevate our industry as a whole. And, I'm really looking forward to Technovations, because like, I'm a tech nerd at heart. Like, I only know about the extent of hitting restart on my computer, but I love learning about emerging technologies that are out there that are going to help progress this industry as a whole. And I'm really looking forward to the Shark Tank style panel that's going to be out there and giving because like, as a startup, as an entrepreneur at heart, like, I love that environment. I love seeing that side of things. And then especially with investment, I don't want to say it's drying up, but I think over the next probably 24 months, people are going to be very strategic about what companies they invest in from a venture capitalist perspective. Again, I'm not one, but, just based off of my inclinations and research that I've done. So I think it's going to be a good experience, because it's also, when you do have to go out there and find funding, like, this is a trial run, and you never know. Somebody might be in the audience watching that just might be like, you know what, I'm going to invest in that. I like that idea.
Yeah, the best thing about our membership is that we are so pragmatic that we'll adopt to anything that could make us have a competitive edge and actually serve our customers better. So that, to me, is what technology is showcased here. Relationships are the cornerstone of, we don't ever forget that. But if we can do something that provides greater visibility, that provides greater understanding of where, the pinch points are, and we can do a better addressing them for our customers, then by all means, let's invest into that technology. But sometimes this happened. I had a conversation at the annual conference. A guy came up to me and he said, I didn't even know that I didn't know. And starting on Monday, I'm going to have to adapt. Just learn. I've got 50 million cards. I'm going to start calling people, but that's trying to do, is provide that for you as a member and give you the best, so that makes you think, all right, I got to go back and do some homework.
No, absolutely. And, I think even from a membership standpoint alone, like, if you're, really a broker of any size, you guys, just like the legal resources that are there for you in the form of contracts alone are worth its weight in gold. And, and then it is the education piece. It is being brought up to speed on like what's going on Capitol Hill and the decisions that are made there and how it affects you at the office level, that a lot of people I don't think a lot of people do and put enough weight on, and about the legislation that's put in place and how it does affect their business and our industry as a whole. And, for me personally, it's like you know, the broker transparency drum is just starting to get beat again here, and bringing this information up. And then I broke down this article a couple of weeks back, but it was penned by Bob Besterfield with CH Robinson, and what's going on with that. So from your perspective, from what I broke down, and that is essentially my opinion off of that article, was that the FMCSA is essentially stating that they're not liable if they don't hold it or put a carrier out of service, but it's the broker's responsibility and the shipper's responsibility to not work with that carrier if there's violations.
Yeah, it's a very disappointing result, and really I mean, you think about the FMCSA, they have a plenary authority over safety. That is what they're committed to do. And yet somehow they say we can only ensure a bare minimum. And to us, what standard is set then? Are we to determine the standard? Because you can only be penalized, never any way to win if you set your own standard. And so what we've been saying for years is, give us an explicable safety standard. We have suggestions. Obviously, we've had legislation for, a decade now, which suggests they have to have insurance, they have to be licensed, they have to have sufficient capital, right? Like we have, a set, but if they don't want that, let's determine what it is that you think is sufficient. And also, if they don't have the resource to physically audit carriers, which they don't, right? We know 90% of it all to ensure of safety, then let's think of a different way. You've got out there, surely we can start collecting this data and make it actionable, and so that we're not guessing what's going to happen when we pick a carrier.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of like my thing is, it's like, I agree with their stance to a point that, yes, we need to assume responsibility of who we're assigning to our shipments and who we're setting up. But I'm also of the belief that you are the governing body. You are the ones who are activating and monitoring every single MC or motor carrier authority that's in the system. For you to essentially sit here and say you have no liability if you guys don't act in a timely manner, like there's lives at risk from that. Like it's that checks and balance system. Like, yes, as the person in the day-to-day, yes, we should be very aware of who we are putting on our shipments and everything else. But if the governing body is essentially removing themselves from any repercussions at that, like that, to me, it's like, I think of like how many small business owners are out there that might see something fall between the cracks, and then all of a sudden they're on the hook for that.
Yeah, I mean, our organization provides kind of a checklist of sorts, and this is not us say that you have to do these or anything, but this is what we recommend you look at. And again, we're not trying to take ability for anyone's decisions, but we try to say, hey, here's some things that you should look at. However, we're sort of stuck in the place that we are, meaning we only have access to certain kinds of data. We don't necessarily know if there's a reason for a conditional rating, if they've been rated a decade. We really don't know. And so you're sort of assuming these superpowers on behalf of, which is patently unfair, but that's the situation we're in. So we continue to be, don't we want safer highways? Isn't that something that's a beneficial outcome for all communities? Yeah. From the carrier to the broker to the shipper to the traveling public, all aim for. And this is an untenable situation. So, CH Robinson brought the Supreme Court case. The Supreme Court decided not to act on it because there's not tech split in the circuit, which is when they start getting interested. But that means that each circuit's kind of going to their own rationale and their own rule. And so then we're stuck between, well, which one do we follow? Split in the circuits, who do we side with? Who do we go with? And that makes it very, very challenging business.
Yeah. And that's my thing is, it's like, how do you proceed? Like what decisions can you make at that level of, cause again, how many people that are out there that don't have a compliance department? Like you look at the large, like the CH Robinson of the world, like they have a department for departments, probably. I don't know what their internal structure looks like, but there are like this entire industry is made up of small business, and the fact of the matter is how we operate and the decisions that we make, like without the education piece behind a lot of it, is it's like they only know so much. And then again, it's like, this is just an assault on small business for, it's like the industry as a whole, but like especially the smaller providers. It's like, it's just another layer. And it's like, who's not to say, like, what if that carrier hits another carrier at that time. You know, like, again, it's not just a broker shipper issue. Like, I think it's a motoring public issue from my perspective.
Yeah. And, you know, the other thing too is that I believe that carriers should be rated as themselves, not against one another. And that, you know, it's one of the kind of data sets that FMCSA was contemplating. And it doesn't, right? Because what if they all compare really well, but one of them is the worst of the best? Well, it's still really good. So we want people to have an understanding and appreciation of who the carrier of other carriers, and so they can make an informed decision. We don't have that capacity.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's an ever evolving thing, but this is like, again, like, this is why, you know, frankly, you guys, this is why a lot of the stuff that we talk about on this show is because it's not just like surface level. It's not just like clickbait headlines or anything like that. Like, there are actual repercussions for a lot of actions. And this is like why you need to be involved in stuff like this. You need, like, and if you don't like a lot of these things, call your local officials, hold them accountable for this stuff, because they have the ability, who oversees the FMCSA and the DOT and all of that stuff. You guys, our local officials who are in our backyards right now. If you don't like some of these laws and the legislation that's being passed and talked about on Capitol Hill, get involved, because this affects us.
100%. And you really saw, this was a few weeks ago, the Wall Street Journal had an article about Amazon and the carriers that it was sort of this portrayal of an unsafe practice. And you know, I special insights into what Amazon does or doesn't do. But the whole point is that they have just the same information as any of our brokers, which is not a lot, right? Decisions the best way that they can based on a really lack of information. And what is it take to get the FMCSA off the dime? What is it going to take to get the legislation? You know, we're hopeful push on safety, that we sort of are shaming them into it. And I hate to say it that way, but I'm not sure what else we can do other than say, this is a win-win for we're going to continue to beat the drum. And you're exactly right about being involved. You know, we had this policy we had about like 100 and so people come up from various, you know, businesses around the country. And that's what members need to hear. They can't just hear from people in DC. They've got to people who represent or in their district who are their constituent, because then it makes it a little bit more meaningful to them and a little bit more understandable. Like, oh, I understand this business that is in my hurting because it's not having, you know, we're doing nothing on this. And so that's a message.
Yep. Sorry, Annika, it got kind of cut out there at the end.
Best point you've ever heard.
I'm sorry?
I said I made the best point I've ever made in my life.
No, but you know, it's to me, I mean, a lot of it is, it's like, I feel like, you know, sometimes like the excitement of getting into business and everything is, you only research so much, you know, and you don't necessarily see like kind of like what's coming up in the pipeline and how it can negatively affect you. And, you know, like, I know like the broker transparency thing, this is now all of a sudden coming to light again for, you know, hasn't been essentially talked about for the last couple of years. And now it's being brought in. Like, what is this law that keeps on being referred to? Like, what does it even mean?
So the law is back to the early 80s, and the early 80s was a special time for all of us. I'm sure it was a special time for you, Chris. You're probably born in the early 80s. Maybe you're a little bit older.
Mid 80s, 86.
Okay. That makes me feel really older, but that's okay. I'm gonna get through it. We're gonna work through it. No, so it's a vintage law, if I can be signed. It's a vintage law, and it was contemplating a world where the broker was on the side as the carrier. So there were two entities, right? There weren't three. There was the shipper, and then the carrier is the broker. And now, as you know, we have three, right? We have the broker, the shipper, and we also have incredible data anyone can access at any time. At the beginning of this show, you just gave us some data, and that's because there are so many outlets. There's so much transparency in this space. And so what this law says is basically that a carrier can look at every price input that a broker has from the shipper side to the carrier and determine if they think it's fair. Well, who does? Where in America do you do that? You don't go to Home Depot and say, well, how much did you get what was the wholesale price bolt?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, how much are you upcharging me on the hammer? You know,
Yeah.
they don't do that. And part of it is because the data that we're getting on the shipper side is proprietary.
Yes.
So we're not supposed to reveal. So yes, they have a capacity to look at it, but it's typically on site. And why is it that way? Because information that's transmitted over the internet, I don't know if you know about this, Chris, can go like wildfire, can get everywhere. And so then where is the secretary? We have literally just exposed our shipper customers, their information into the world. And that's completely irresponsible and we would be sued. So law says something that is contemplating a different time. We need to modernize. We've been calling for the modernization of the act. We think that it's kind of like, a former railroader. It's kind of like there used to be laws about stopping and checking a steam locomotive every 90 miles just to make sure the water was, it's like, well, we don't use steam locomotives anymore. So why would we continue to have rules like that? Right? Like this.
Oh, right when you were making another good point, it cut out. But no, I mean, to your point though there, and like a lot of these things that, like, again, I think like there's probably a lot of laws that are out there that affect not just our industry, but our lives as a whole that were written 30, 40, 50 years ago, and they're not applicable to today. And they do need to be revised because, I mean, you're right. Like, I think the messaging is off in like what because like, again, like the broker transparency is always brokers make 80% on the load and they're, all of this stuff. And it's not the real meaning behind it, because I think the driver community would be greatly shocked on how little the profit margin actually is as a freight broker. And I talk about this a lot. In a lot of the standard shipments that I moved, as from a drive-in and reefer perspective, it was like anywhere from 10 to 15% profit margin per load. And again, like, this is just my experience. This isn't anybody else that's out there. And again, it's like, I think that it gets put out there that somehow brokers are making all of this money on these shipments. That's just not the case, because it's too competitive. Like, no shipper would give somebody else an elevated rate when 95% of the market's telling them that they could do it for exponentially less than that. And that's not us driving the market down at all. Fair market is fair market, and that's how it goes. Now, what somebody does with that internally as a broker, that's up to them. But if somebody out there is working a specific lane for an extremely cheap price, just don't call them. Don't take the load. Like, and I think that for me, like, nobody's price fixing. Like, you can't do, there's way too much data out there. There's no collusion. There's no price fixing that's going on.
The marketplace is too balkanized, right? There are too many in the marketplace. So it's impossible. The data is too readily available. It's not that kind of marketplace. And so you're exact. And so the fluctuations of this is because of market fluctuations. And so, as you know, carriers have had the leverage for the past 2 years in this peak environment because the capacity was so scarce.
Yeah.
And so now capacity, and so everything is sort of right sizing. And so if you're hearing anything in the, being big bad wolves, I think that's because they're pulling down again.
Yeah. It's, and again, I think because it's just a natural ebb and flow of it all, is obviously, and this isn't specific to the trucking industry. When any industry is hot, it doesn't matter what it is, there is a massive influx of people. It's essentially modern day gold rush is what it is. Everybody went out to California during the gold rush for what? To try and strike gold. The same thing happens in industries across here. You look at the tech bubble in the early 2000s and everything else, and then mortgages, like when the housing markets, I mean, how many mortgage brokers do you know when the housing market's hot? There, you can't go 5 conversations without somebody saying, hey, if you need a mortgage, come talk to me. That's the point. But like, that's also, you guys, the beauty of the United States and the free market is that you can go in any industry outside of like a doctor or a lawyer, or like where you need an actual degree to practice in it. and shoot for the stars and being an entrepreneur, because just as many stories as there are like that, there are how many stories do you know of people who make it, you know what? And then they make it work and they have generational life-changing experiences and generational wealth that is built up based off of the decisions that are made. And it's because they have the ability to come in there and try and make it during those times. But that's what you see is you're going to always see an influx in this, you guys. And that's the harsh reality of business and life. When it gets hot, more people are going to come in and try their hand. Does that mean everybody's going to find success? No, they don't, because there is no playbook to entrepreneurship, but you can't base your business model off of, I just need to make the most money. That's not going to work out for you long-term. And again, I think like there's just a lot of, it's a lot of people are just like talking about the symptom as opposed to like what the core issue is with a lot of these things. And that's what I like want to, but again, it's back down to the education to me. It's always about reaching out and being a part of the TIA and being a part of, and just talking to other brokers and what they're experiencing in the market. And there's just so much value to this and not just taking what one person says for it. And I talk about this a lot, and don't just listen to what I have to say about a lot of these topics. Do your own research on this, because I don't have all the answers. I just, essentially know a lot of what not to do in this industry. And that's kind of like what I put my stuff out there on.
Well, it's interesting because we've had a holistic marketplace over the last 2 years, to your point. So it's going to calm down. That doesn't mean we're in a depression. There's still a lot of freight out there. So we're hopeful that we can continue to educate those who started during the pandemic, that they can continue their success as the market cools, because that is sophistication and they're going to need to learn that, right?
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. And it's like, if you look at all the longest standing companies in America, do you think they've never faced adversity and market shifts and everything else? Like, I mean, look at C.H. Robinson, for example. They've been around since like the 1800s. Like literally, I'm pretty sure they were founded in the late 1800s. And market shifts are part of this, you guys. But again, it's always about the strategy that you're going to take. If your strategy is to chase markets, that is a losing strategy. Like I personally feel like if you're building up your company, it's always about that core niche, that niche region, that niche freight type, and doubling down on that. And then you expand as you grow. You can't just be a jack of all trades in this industry because it's too competitive. There are too many providers. And frankly, if you're out there saying, well, I want to move Atlanta to Chicago, don't. Everybody moves Atlanta to Chicago. Like nobody needs help with that stuff, So again, it's about differentiating yourself and finding the need without sounding basic. And you just can't do that if you're offering what everybody else offers. Markets are going to shift. Things are going to change. It expands, it contracts. But if you don't quit, if you adjust your practices during these downtimes and you go on all offense, don't take your foot off the gas in these markets. Go all in, all offense right now. Let everybody else start playing defense. And then when this market shifts back, you will have a greater share of opportunity than you could have ever imagined.
Well, I'm going to say this, and I hope you can hear it because it's so pithy. I can't even. Don't chase markets, chase solutions.
Yes. Yes, that's exactly it. Don't chase markets, chase solutions. And all right, next Thursday, Friday, Technovations is going on. And then you guys, again, the main one is in Orlando in April of 2023, right?
Yeah, you can sign up. I think registration's going live pretty soon. Not yet. Pretty soon. Sign up.
Yes. No, absolutely, you guys. And check it out. You guys reach out to the TIA. I can't stress this enough. It is such a phenomenal organization from top down, and everybody's willing to help. And it's full of actual freight brokers. There's no theory. All right. You guys, you get around other brokers and talk to them. You will find that in there. Nobody's got their guards up at these conferences at all. People are there to help because they know that if they're putting out best practices, it's only going to inevitably help them. So Ann, how does anybody reach out to you or to find out more about the TIA or Technovations or anything?
Yeah. So our website, ianet.org, and I am Renke at TIA.org. So please feel free to email me. I can only improve the more.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. So, Ann, thank you guys for joining. Thank you for joining, and everybody else who was in the comments. You guys, thank you guys so much for showing up today. As always, if you guys see value in what we just talked about, share the show, because at the end of the day, you guys, this is how this is going to continue to grow. Because if you see value in it, Your network's going to see value in it as well. I appreciate you guys all so much, and we'll be